Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Email me directly. My email is tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today we are discussing a circa 1979 Rolex Oyster Perpetual Sea-Dweller, reference 1665. This roughly 6.2 million serial number watch represents a white Sea-Dweller with rail dial. Lots of fun. We'll talk about those details in a moment, but first, the bare measurements. The watch is 40 millimeters in diameter. It measures 15.7 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip. It is 47.6 millimeters, which is fairly narrow by modern Rolex standards, with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. A few details before we talk about the fit and the bracelet. You can see that the case is very intact. I'd rate it an 8 to 8.5 out of 10. You can see some refinishing has taken place, but the spring bars are nowhere near protruding from the lugs. There's plenty of depth laterally. You can see that the shape is symmetrical and there's plenty of metal. You can also see that there's substantial evidence of the original factory bevels, and that at all four corners. And whenever you can see evidence of the original factory bevels on a Rolex vintage case, you know that the case is largely intact. Satin finished tops, polished sides. I'll give you a good look at each side, as well as all four corners of the watch. Now, the hardware, the bracelet. The bracelet's a little bit newer than the watch. The watch is 79, the bracelet's about 1984. It is a 93150 with 585 end links. You can see that's substantiated down here, 585 and 93150. It features an I stamp, I being the letter that tags this as a 1984, and you can see it as 93150. Taking a quick look on my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference. The watch is more substantial from, say, a 1680 Submariner of the period, but still, at less than 48 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, I can envision this watch wearing well on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. You're going to want to wear it with a jacket cuff. It's probably not going to allow the tightest of dress sleeves to ride up and over that bezel, but you will appreciate the symmetry and beauty of a dial that does not have a Cyclops eye magnifier. A lovely piece and a wonderful fit for a smaller wrist. Taking a quick look at the bracelet. Again, it is about 5 years newer than the watch itself. You can see it's an Oyster design 3-link. It features removable links fixed by screws. This one seems to have been wrapped to provide it with extra protection. And removable links are fixed by screws. You see there is plenty of depth left on the clasp body itself. Sharp definition retained for the 5-point coronet, as well as the embossed style links. You can see there are divots internally to allow you to restation the bracelet in the clasp for fine-tuning the fit. And there is a fold-out, let me show you this, a fold-out dive extension that allow you to use the watch over a diving suit or simply a thick winter coat. A note on water resistance and vintage watches. We will water test the watch for you if you want to verify that it can still be used for swimming in the modern era, but I would never recommend swimming with a vintage watch, even a vintage dive watch. It's taking an unnecessary risk with so much of the value of this watch tied up in the condition of the dial. You can swim with a modern Rolex or Omega. I recommend, even if this watch passes a swimmable water resistance test, not taking it in the water. And that's just me being honest about the limits of vintage watches. I have no doubt the watch could in fact pass a water test, but don't take the risk. We talked a little bit about the case. You can see there's a trip-lock crown guards that still have plenty of body and definition. The watch was originally 610 meters water resistant and would have featured a helium escape valve, that signature feature of the Sea-Dweller, which along with the greater depth ratings helped to set it apart from the Submariners. You can also see on the reverse side more boasting about the gas escape valve. It was there for saturation divers who needed to release helium that might build up in the watch during a dive. The bezel is correct to the period, which means bidirectional rotating, and there is a little bit of ghosting. It's turned a bit gray rather than perfect black. I like the fact that it's not too aged. It doesn't look preternaturally faded. Some people will go crazy with chemicals on these and try to sell them as unicorn style patina watches, something that's just too rare and exquisite for words, and if it's too good to be true, it usually is. Exaggerated patinas on these bezels are generally a bad thing. This one has a believable patina, as the bezel pearl matches the hands, matches the dial, and you can see there are some scratches and scuffs and scars on this bezel insert, which is of course aluminum, but that just speaks to the originality. Everything here seems symmetrical. The dial, however, is by far the highlight of the watch. There's a little evidence of wear and handling on the hands, but again, their patina matches the dial perfectly. I'd rather have everything matching and symmetrical. The dial is superb. There's not a mark on it. It is what's often described as a white Sea-Dweller rail dial. So you can see what the rail dial really means is that the E and the Y and the C and the C of superlative chronometer officially certified, they line up. It's almost like a buck-toothed gap, sometimes described as a rail dial on Rolex watches featuring this alignment. We have little canted italics for the feet and the meters, really long minute hashes that almost touch the plots of hour loom, and then this T-Swiss T sandwich with the less than 25 notation, all of this distinctive of the white Sea-Dweller rail dials. We also have a lovely and even patina. There's no evidence of any contact, no dirt, no water damage on this dial. It is really quite good. Inside the case, we have Rolex caliber 1570. It is a vintage Rolex movement that is a chronometer and still able to keep chronometer time when properly adjusted and serviced. It's an automatic winder with a 48-hour power reserve. It does have stop seconds. It does not have a quick set date. It pivots on 26 jewels. It's free sprung for durability, 5-position adjusted. It has a handmade overcoil hairspring, so it will keep even time in any position relative to gravity, and it beats away at a very vintagey 19,800 vibrations per hour, which means it is a lovely old tractor that can still keep excellent time and depicts the evolution of Rolex movements, the overcoil, the free sprung architecture, the chronometer certification, but like older Rolex movements, it also has no quick set date, a slower beat rate, and a single-sided balance cock rather than a full balance bridge. This is an outstanding example of a 1665 white Sea-Dweller rail dial. Reach out to me, Tim Mosso, at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And there is your proof that this dial is all tritium.